One, two, three. We are not live. We are not live, but we are alive. Hello, lovely Gary.
Hello, Rachel.
Hello, hello, lovely YouTuber. Today we are going to be taking a look back at 5 of our top picks, our top tea time tutorials. So some of the best 5 mindful activities that we think we've created in the last, well, since we've been going, Gary, actually in the last year and a half or so, however long it is. So lovely YouTuber, if you want to skip ahead to when we are going through those 5 top picks, you can, because I'll put the time code below. Before you go though, please make sure if you like any of our content that you give us a lovely thumbs up. It does help us get out in the algorithm. So thumbs up, subscribe, hit the bell so you're notified when we put out content, which is at least every Friday. And of course, leave a comment below. All these things, one, we love to see the comments. We love to hear what you're saying. But also as well, it does help us in the algorithm, because then what happens is YouTube thinks these guys are interesting. They're getting likes, they're getting comments, and it just picks us up and puts us out there, which helps the channel. It helps other people to see what we're doing. If you're enjoying it, somebody else might as well. So see that as your bit of giving back to the planet, giving back to paying it forward, as they say. You're letting somebody else know about this content by doing that. So please, if you could do that, that would be absolutely lovely. If you are going off to watch our 5 top sessions, if you do see something like the look of, I will give you the time code so you can click on it and watch the whole of that video. So there you go. But before we do that, let's have a little chat, Gary. Okay. I saw something the other day and I thought this is actually the way the universe works. And, you know, we are at the end of the year as we're recording now. Obviously, you might watch this in May of next year, but we're recording now. It's the end of the year. We're doing our review. But I think also as well at the end of the year, as well as, you know, planning your New Year's resolutions and things that you want to achieve, I think it's really important to look at what you have achieved and have gratitude for all that you have received in the last year and what you've achieved. And I was watching something the other day, and this person said, you know, as we go through our lives, you know, sometimes we can, you know, put work, put energy, give to a situation, and we want that situation to pay off. So it might be that you might be really working hard towards trying to get a job or changing your career, or you're you know, focusing on one company. Or it might be that you are giving to a particular friendship. And what happens in those 2 situations is that you don't get back what you perceive that you've put in. So that job offer doesn't come. That company says, you know, not at this time. And I always say, until you are at the end of the road, when you leave this earth, you don't know if it's a no. It might just be not yet. So that's always a positive way to look at things. That company might say no, but at this point, not yet. It's really important to look at what you actually have received, because the universe has a very strange way of doing things, I think, Gary. That job might not actually be the right job for you, but I think you'll find that you will get a job from this angle here. And as you go through your life, you'll probably realize that that was the right job. Thank goodness I didn't get that job, because it wasn't meant for me. If you give out positive things, if you give your heart and your soul, even if these things don't work out, it will come from this angle here, and you will still be given back good things in your life. And that is what we have to focus on. Look at what you are being given. Maybe not from those situations, but maybe those situations weren't the right ones for you. But you've learned to give of yourself, and that's why you have received. There you go. I thought that was a brilliant way to look at things, Gary, because sometimes life can beat us down, but no, once again, focus on the positives. What say you, my friend?
Well, exactly. I can give an example of that. So I thought this career move would be to work in the fashion industry, as in retail. So I got this lovely job. I went, and in fact, I was moving away from the seaside town that I sort of was living at the time as in my early 20s. And it was a company called Jaeger. I don't know if they still exist, Jaeger. And for menswear, and it was based in Bath, a lovely location, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. But this is the job. This is going to be everything. Well, I got the job, but I couldn't afford to live there because my starting salary wasn't that high. And when you started looking at accommodation and everything, it was quite expensive. And I'd taken out a small loan for a car at the time, and with the loan for the car and trying to find accommodation and look after myself, this is going to be impossible. This is silly. So I went to my bank and said, "Oh, is it possible to change the payments, whatever?" They were having none of it. said, no, if you're going to do something, stay nearer to home. I think, what, stay here? You're joking. Why would I want to stay here? I could go to Bath and I'm going to work in fashion retail. Do you know what turned out? Because of that, I carried on just working, but I really realized that I really liked fashion and I really liked being creative. And I put myself went back to college, actually, went part-time working. I was carrying on working, then went back to college. If I had not done that, I would have not worked in the fashion industry as a designer. Rather than just retailing out fashion, I actually became a fashion designer. And that was my whole dream. That was a dream that seemed impossible, which I would have never have sort of like fulfilled if I'd carried on, if I'd just got the job in retail and stuck in retail. It wouldn't have happened. So again, disappointments actually are there so that we actually get to what we really should be doing. And actually that thing that we really should be doing is probably 10 times better than what we thought the first thing was. So
Exactly.
there's your example. And so what you've just said is absolutely true. Absolutely true.
And I think, sometimes, Gary, I think it's very difficult in that moment, isn't it? I'm sure when you didn't get that job, you were quite devastated. And you just think, why is the world against me? But I would just encourage anybody that when that happens, yes, of course, feel the pain, feel the sadness, feel the sorrow. Give yourself a day or two, eat lots of chocolate, get over it. But, feel that. But then just try and look back at another situation. Just try and think to yourself, hang on, right. When was the last time something like this happened to me? And then what happened? And I'm sure you will find, yeah, that was devastating. But then that led to that. Oh, and then that led to that. And that was a great thing. I firmly believe this always happens. I mean, I've had so many examples of that in my life, which I won't go into, but so many times. So I fully agree with you, Gary. Fully agree with you. Always look back.
If we can just put out that essence of what we've been talking about when we get to this point in the year, and it's always a reflective time. You get to the end of the year, this changing from one number to the next, and almost see going forward as the adventure, because none of us really know what is in front of us. We can have hopes, we can hope what's in front of us. And in fact, sometimes it's quite nice to have those hopes and aspirations, but we don't have to say we want this, this, and this set in stone by the summer, because it's not necessarily going to happen. We're only setting ourselves up to fail or to be disappointed, most likely. For anyone that's had not a fantastic year to review, think, no, I'm moving on my adventure forwards, and these things have happened, and I'm now going to have much better things coming to me now, because the bad things, they've gone out of the way. They're gone.
And those bad things, if you look at them in that way, will give you strength. They help you to grow. As we've said before on this channel, Gary, you only grow through tough times, through painful times. When everything is going along sailing, you're not learning. You have to go through these tough times to learn and to grow. And they're horrible when they're happening. But if you can look at it it's all a positive. It's all a positive. You were sent that person. You were sent that rejection. You were sent that so that you could learn and grow from it. And my life is changing quite a lot since I've gone on that mindset instead of this negative ninny, which I was for many years. So yeah, it's all changing. So changes. So there you go. That's our lesson for the day. But now let's reflect upon the wonderful exercises that we have done in the last year or so, Gary, because I think it's about 75 videos now, 75 tea time tutorials. Yeah. I mean, on the channel, there's well over 150 because we've got all the sewing stuff on the channel.
Yeah, exactly. There's all those sewing. There's loads of sewing things there, and I noticed a lot of people, they love the sewing bits and pieces and all the projects that you've put there for them. It's least, I do think, well, it's crazy that a whole year's gone by. So that's at least 52, and I know we started the year before that, so we started in 2022.
And we've never missed a week. We've never missed a week, Gary.
We have never missed a week, have we? And no. Through thick and thin, through holidays and other things that's come along, we've always managed to get a tea time tutorial out there for people. Now, all of you, I know our viewers, they're all a different mixed bunch of people. That some people like the painting, some people like the sewing and everything, and they might like the chat, but maybe they don't like the chat, first of all. But there's something there for everyone. I had a quick browse through. So so I think hopefully we come up. We can't talk about them all, and all of them are fantastic. I love doing them all, and I love the guests. and having new people coming in to show us what they would do, which I find really interesting for me, and it gives me a break. And
Yes.
so we're just going to pick 5.
Yes, we are.
Five.
Well, okay, so you mentioned, let's do a guest one first of all, Gary. So you mentioned we had some guests, and we loved all of our guests. We loved all of them. But we met someone for the first time. I mean, you met John. I knew John, but the two of us didn't know a lady called Crystal Tan. And I'll just bring our screens in so we can show what we did, Gary. So these are our leaves that we did. So Crystal Tan is an amazing watercolor artist. But the one thing that she did say in that video was very interesting, because she talked about her time as a teacher. Sorry, before she became a watercolor artist. She said she'd only started watercoloring. I think it was in COVID times, wasn't it?
Yes.
And yet she is, she's just so talented. So she took us through this process of making leaves. So you can see what we have done here, and you can see Gary's lovely leaves. But let's just take you over to the video so that you can have a quick look at what she was actually doing with us. Lovely. So as we can see, this is Crystal. And she's got this wonderful colours next to her and this lovely little brush. But that's all. She said herself, you don't need a lot to get started, Gary. And it's just about mixing those colours and playing. What did you get out of this exercise?
It was such a lovely exercise about actually just handling the wet paint. So it's about getting a nice loading up your brush there. She's just doing that now, and actually just with it's loading up the brush and then offloading the color onto the paper and then manipulating that paint. So especially with watercolor, it's still very fluid once you've put it down on the paper. So you can move it, you can manipulate it, you can layer it, which is really nice. So I think this is a great first lesson for anyone that's maybe a beginner in watercolor, or even just has had a little dabble but would like to sort of just explore it a little bit more. And just the shape of a leaf, just doing a simple leaf shape, and it just makes, and experimenting with each one just makes it really, really exciting. You can see it there. She's just dipped in a little bit more color. So while it was still wet, she just added a little spot, a little bit more color into it. So it just sort of bled and sort of merged with the other color. So it's really, really nice little tutorial, that one. I really enjoy that.
Yeah, it was lovely. And what she was saying, the reason that she brought this to us, she said it is just, yes, you are learning a little bit about watercolors, as you just said there, and learning to use a brush. But she was saying that it was a very mindful process. You could she said that sometimes she sort of warms herself up before she starts creating. And this is the kind of thing that she would do to warm up. She would just get her pad out with her paints and then just simply start painting these leaves.
And a simple, repetitive shape is a great way. So you don't have to think about too much. Once you've created the shape once, you then just keep repeating it. And so it's not thinking about, I've got to get it correct, or I'm looking at something and trying to represent that as a painting or a drawing. It's not. It's actually about looking at just exploring the paint and just having that sort of, again, that expectation. Well, what's going to happen? What if I put a little blob of paint here? How is it going to work? What is it going to do? And that's the whole point of just absorbing yourself into this little sort of mindful doodle painting exercise.
Yeah. It was amazing as well when we'd finished, you and I, and you could see they're both quite different. And she looked at them, didn't she? And she said, "Oh, Rachel, I see with yours little well, she said birds, didn't she?" And then I actually made him into a bird. So that was really sweet. But she said, I can actually see all these little birds all sat together, which was lovely. So that was really Gary, can you hold yours closer to the camera? We can just
of course I can. Let's bring that up. So there we are. I didn't work into it, but they could easily become very colorful little sort of tropical birds, actually, from leaves to tropical birds. Absolutely beautiful. And again, we've got different makes of paint. So my paint sometimes is a bit more sort of brighter and got more sort of sharper colors. But and again, just doing these exercises over there, Rachel, you have gone such leaps and bounds with your artwork. You really have, haven't you?
Hey, well, no, because I have. And when we started this channel, it was about, we did start by saying, well, let's, see if we can bring some new people to Crafty Monkeys. And also Gary said, you never, you're not doing these creative things that you talk about, so why don't we
No.
teach you to do them? So it was very much about that. But I've really realized how important creativity is to me. I love our
Yeah.
weekly sessions that I do
Yeah.
with Gary. I love that I've got all this stuff. But I looked at a picture I put up on January the 1st last year, I think it was, on Instagram, and I said, here's my vision board for the year, and this board was almost empty. And now I look and go, wow, that's all mine. And it's a very important part of life to do something creative and to be mindful with it. And I've loved our sessions, but on the plus side, yes, the techniques have improved,
Yeah.
so yeah. And it was lovely to see how those colors all work together, which can help you with your watercolors. So
Yeah, absolutely. A lovely,
okay,
thank
so
you.
yeah,
Yes.
so I'll put the link below for that one so that people can see the full version of that. Now, the next one I've got on my list, Gary, or do you want to let's do your sewing one, because as we said, we've got something for everyone here.
It was the embroidery. So just doing some simple, I just demonstrated this simple little doodle flower, this embroidery flower. And it was something actually we did on the retreat. So we did the retreat at Rutland, and I gave everyone on the retreat in the evening, everyone had a little piece of this felt and some thread and a needle. And I just said, let's just all together just do a really simple embroidery with a few stitches. So there was like this lazy daisy stitch, there's a little French knot stitch, there's a running stitch or a back stitch there as well. And we just did a series of these tiny little stitches, just almost just to get you started. Felt is really easy to stitch through and to work on. And we've just used a simple perlé thread, just a nice sort of like thickish thread to work with. I've put it in my little, this is my doodle sketchbook. And in fact, some of the other doodles in here where we've done other things, you'll find on the channel as well. So you'll definitely find all of the rest of these. And then I've put them in a book, just a book of my doodly exercises. So you can find that in the Crafty Monkey shop if you want to download the book as well, so you can learn how to make the book. But it was about this embroidery. It was the flower embroidery, and I really enjoyed both teaching it and also seeing everybody at the retreat, and you mastering it as well, Rachel, who never really does much hand in sewing at all, do you?
No, that's right, and I really enjoyed it, and I actually took it with me to Rutland to finish, because I knew it was going to be a stressful event. I'm going to show you now the video of us both actually doing this. Right, so there you are. That was my finished version, and actually I did another petal on there as well, and I added to it, and that was yours, Gary. So yeah, and that's all you need. It's a little bit of thread and a little bit of I got a piece of linen from my scrap box, Gary.
Was it? No, do you know what I thought it was actually the wadding that you put in between quilting.
It was the wadding. It was the wadding that we'd got Visaline, and it was like one of those little sample books that they send out, and I just literally took a piece of that, and it was great to sew with. But just a lovely little piece, and you could add to that. So that's what I did. I added grass, I added more petals. Really, really lovely to play along with that one. And as we saw, as you said, Gary, when we did it at Rutland, there were so many ladies who had not actually sat and hand sewed, and at first they were like, oh, do we really have to do this? But they all really enjoyed it, didn't they? They said they found it so mindful.
Yeah, they did. They all made something. They all came away. So it's funny you say that, because you can see you're sat there in front of everyone saying, right, now we're gonna have a go at this. And you see that, oh my god, do we really have to take part? But actually, once they got the little pack out and actually started, they really got absorbed into it, and it was something that, over a short period of time they could achieve. But it was about getting into that hand sewing again. And I find if I pick up a needle and thread, it could be from hemming a pair of trousers, which we have done as one of our very early tutorials with you. But I love to hem, I love to hand sew, I love to do a bit of embroidery within my work as well. So I just find it's really quite meditative, it's quite relaxing. And again, time just goes by when you're doing it. So it's a great doodle exercise.
And we must say as well, Gary, that what we actually did here, we were learning stitches, and so I went back in and I did some French knots because you taught me those. And then we had that little petals there. What was that called? I can't remember. When you catch,
so that's the little petals is called a lazy daisy stitch. So you learn to do that. So and then you sort of then you fill the middle of the daisy up with your French knots. That's what I did.
Lovely. Yeah. Yeah, it was such a nice exercise. So there you go. So that was the next one. But this was such fun because all the pieces came from a couple of pieces of work that we'd done, and then we just put them together. But yeah, this was great. So just talk us through the technique, and I'll find it.
Okay, so it's about layering up with different techniques. There's lots of different media here. So what I said was to try. We did 2 pieces of paper the same size, and basically I just gave you some prompts to make marks across the page. We used some wax, and again, you might have remembered this going back from school when we actually just used to use a wax candle just to scribble all over the page, and then we used to put a wash of color on, and where with the wax was it resisted, so it's about wax resist. Then we added pencil marks in, some biro marks. We wetted the paper so it's quite wet, and then dropped in some really nice colors from our paint palettes and things like that. And then the idea was then we dried them off with a hairdryer, and then we just randomly cut them up, and then we divided. So we randomly cut them up into the sort of these sort of shapes here. So we just sort of, and then we looked at actually putting them together. So it's quite abstract, but you still form a pattern. You still start playing with color and the way that things are formed, and then that's how you end up with something. Probably, especially when you put a frame around it, you end up with something like this that does look really, really quite. You go into it and you'll see all the activity, all the different mark making, and the different processes that are in there when you really start to focus into it. Really
Yes,
nice.
and I have found the video. I'm going to here. So right, so you can see here, Gary, you can see where that wax is there, and then I'm just going over it with the pen, and you are. And this is how it all started. So it was about creating these 2 pieces, or a piece each, with all of these different colors on, as you've said, with the wax resist there, and just scribbling and playing. And then as we go further down the video,
There
so
we
now
are.
we've actually cut those pieces.
Yes.
And you're sticking them on. And this was great as well, because you really had to kind of play with the formation of them and look at the different patterns and how they work together. So that was once again part of the interesting bit of creativity with it as well.
And I give you prompts as we're going along and making those marks. You have prompts, so you don't just like randomly go off unsupported. Within the video, in the recording, you'll hear me say, right now I want you to make these sort of marks or whatever. So it's very much the principle. We're sort of going over it very quickly, but the principle, that's the principle. But actually the process takes a little bit more thought before you actually get to your final piece. And like you say at the end there, it's really nice actually the assembling and thinking how they all sort of merge together and how they start to fit, because you haven't cut straight lines across these pieces, you've cut curved lines, and then the curved lines have got to fit together also.
Yeah, and when you are making them as well, that's the thing that I've learned, I think, with this YouTube channel, Gary, is to not give in, not get frustrated, and not throw anything away. Because I think when we were first creating our pages, I remember looking at mine going, it's a mess. It's just how is this going to turn into anything? And then actually, when you cut them into strips like this and you put them together, it was really interesting to see all these wonderful little patterns and doodles that you would never have imagined from looking at that piece of card. There you go. That is Gary's. That was framed. I didn't frame mine. I just put mine on my peg. But I just love, if you looked at this in an art gallery, if that was like one big piece, you'd be going, oh, how has that artist done that? It was just layers upon layers of doodling and paint and drying it and painting and wax resisting it. Really good.
And you can apply those things. You can just keep working on the process. I'll just give you a load of processes. You just keep playing with them and you'll come out with all different types. It doesn't have to be wavy lines. It could be other shapes. You might cut triangles. You might cut loads of circles, and then maybe you place the circles around, layer the circles. You could do any of it and just see what comes out.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's the interesting thing. You have no idea what is going to come out, but something does at the end, and you have created a piece of art. And as we've said, I'm not an artist here at all. And yet that is what I'm creating, which is wonderful. So yeah, another lovely, lovely piece of art. Okay, so let's go into our next one now, which is going to be
That's
And there's
mine.
yours.
Bring mine up so people can see. It was, and again, this process, I mean, a pebble, it's a sort of like, it's an easy shape to draw. It's just sort of like a bit of a, you can look at sort of elongated circles, ovals, and then marks on pebbles. You don't even have to have the pebbles in front of you to sort of copy. You can just imagine those sort of grey, black and white pebbles where they've got a bit of white quartz running through them. They've got marks on them. So, you know, if you haven't got any pebbles at hand, or you haven't seen, maybe just have a quick scroll online, have a look, right, pebbles, that's pebbles, right, and then that sort of transfixed in your mind. And then we just really just went ahead and just started creating these very loose sort of oval shapes, adding some wet sort of water in, adding some grey, some paint. And in fact, I think we just used the one colour. I think it was just, oh, we had white. So it was black, but watered down that went to grey. And then we used some white. I think this is the time I bought my Posca pen in. And I do like my white Posca pen. And that was it. So if you haven't seen my top 10 Christmas presents, my Posca pen is one of my top 10 Christmas presents. I'd be more than happy to have in my stocking. So that is how we achieved these. Now, have you got the video for that, Rachel? Did you find that one? There we go.
Right, so there you are. So you can see on your table, you've got those lovely pebbles. But this wasn't at all, right, we have to really, do these pebbles. It was more about just being inspired, really, by, the shapes and the colours. And then, as you said, just filling it in there with your paints. Let's just go forward a little bit into the video. Yeah, so now you can see,
nice. Yes,
that we've now watercoloured them in, just drying them off there. And yes, and then we went in with our pens and we just added some of the detail in the pebbles because I could see little speckles in mine. And I definitely saw mine had been actually out in the garden, so there was a little bit of moss on them, a bit of green, and I added a touch of that with the watercolouring. But once again, it was just really a lovely mindful exercise to just mark making. That's all you're doing. This is not
so
what we're saying. Yeah,
it is mark making there, but also again almost like going back to that learning about your materials like we did with crystal. It's about learning what does the paint do when it gets wet, how can you layer it up, because there is layers. It's gone from a very watery grey background and then bringing in darker layers and then working with finer pens going in there. So you're learning, but also you're enjoying, you're absorbing yourself. And I think with a lot of these things that we've got now uploaded onto YouTube, it's about taking the time out, just absorbing yourself in a creative practice. But again, subliminally, not directly, you're actually learning. You're learning about what that media does. When I say media, it's like, what does that paint do? What does that pen do? What does that pencil do? How does it react? How does it react when I'm trying to make marks on top of a wet paper? Or will it be better for me to dry it? How can I then make it like add more interest? Is it that I add little dots on it? Do I do little tiny drawings over it? So again, it's making your mind start to explore, experiment, and having sometimes when you finish at the end of it, time's gone by, and then you come out and go, wow, did I just do that in this 20 minutes, half an hour of my art session? That's exactly what, you get that wow, like, oh my gosh, I've now created something.
Yeah. And look at what I'm using there: a pencil, a biro, and just a very inexpensive painting from a craft shop. So, there's nothing overly expensive there. So that's that. And then the next one is my all-time favorite, Gary.
So yeah, it's a drum roll.
Oh, drum roll. We had such fun with this, and this is what we created.
There you are.
So yeah, marble art. And I do remember part of the fun was me dressing in a plastic bag because I didn't have an apron. I do remember the video that I said, this is such fun. And you said, this is the most fun I've had all week. But it really was great fun. Now, let me just find the video for this because I think we have to see this to believe it. Let's just go in.
I know we needed some sort of tin. We needed a tin or some sort of tray or something to contain the marbles that you were going to then run across this piece of paper. So that's how it all starts. And that's the fun bit. You're thinking, what am I going to do with a handful of these marbles, some ink, and this baking tray? How does that all come together in art? But it does. It gets you started. So the start of the session really is not about a controlled action. It's an uncontrolled action that then you have to then make into art. That's what you have to do.
Well, let's share the screen. And it started with the plastic bag. So I decided to wear a plastic bag as an apron there. I mean, looking quite glamorous there, I think, with that bag around me. And then, as you can see, we had the tray.
Yes.
So it was a tray there, a baking tray, and you've got paper in there. And then have your hairdryer ready as well. And we had some marbles, some kitchen towel, and then we just used ink, didn't we? Just black ink.
Yes. Yes. So I put those marbles, you see, I've contained them in a little pot, and you do need to sort of have a little pot. So you almost like mix it up. So I'm going to just now, I think I'm just going to pour some ink on top of those marbles. So there you are, just a little bit of ink in there, just to get that coated. The marbles have got to be coated in some ink. I mean, you could mix up.
Yeah, I was going to say, you could mix up coffee, couldn't you, Gary? You could do that.
You could, you know, and I often say, you know, if you haven't got ink, you haven't got paints, but you've always got some instant coffee in there. So you could always use that as their color. Now, you've probably got to spoon them in. Yeah, I've got a spoon. There you are. So you've got to like pick them up and you've got to get them in. Just so you're going to spoon those marbles in. They always look like too good to do. They look like you could eat them. They look like blackberries, really. There you are. Right, I'm going to drop them in. Is there another one in there? I found another one in there. Right, so got to get them all out. So you begin with, and the marbles are just run to the outside. They run across a little bit. Now the idea is, look, there we go. So we're just running the marbles, and the marbles are going to draw you the picture. So you are not in control. You're not. The only thing that you're doing is just tipping the tray, and there is a point where you've got to say, I've got to stop. So you have to stop, and then you've got to then dry that piece of work, and that's when you start creating in all the little zones. So that those marbles have created zones for you to then start to doodle. You could fill them out with blocks of color, you can fill them out with little dots, you can make little patterns in some of them, but you've just then created a sheet of paper which you then got to go in and start playing with.
Yeah. Now let's have a look at me, because I was a little bit nervy about popping those marbles in, but I did the same as you. There's the old look. I think that was when I squealed and said, "Oh, this is so exciting," and you were like, "I know, it's the most fun I've had all week." But yeah, so just I was tentative because I was trying to control it. I was like, "Oh, I don't want them to move until I move them." That pot, by the way, never recovered. So that's.
Did it not?
I think I left the ink in it too long. It dried. Okay, so we drop it down. And then, as you can see, this is the fun. This is the fun bit. It's like being at primary school again. So you pick up the tin, and then, whoa, yes, I loved it. I just loved it. Like that.
There you go. Look at that.
And then if we go skip forward, and as you say, we dried it off, and then we just literally added our colours in like that.
Yes, there we go.
And you know, I remember showing that to my husband when I, finished and dried it off, and he went, "That's fantastic. How did you do that?" I said, "It's marbles." But he was like, "That's actually really cool." And as we said, if you now mounted that on this gigantic bit of white card with a black frame around it, and you hung that on your kitchen wall, you'd get people coming going, "Whoa, that's a nice piece of art." And it's like, yeah, it's just marbles and ink. It's not Matisse.
So we give out all the art secrets here.
We do.
All those great artists charging a fortune for their work.
I know. I'm going to start mounting all of my work, and people will come and think I'm an art collector. Oh, you must be a millionaire to get all this up. No, I just do a YouTube channel. Fabulous. Well, let's bring us back into vision, Gary, now. And that is our little roundup. I think my overall favourite from everything we have done, although I know if I saw others, I'd just choose those, but it's got to be the marbles, because do you know what that did for me? That made me lose control. That made me just play, go with colour. And I realised then about this getting into the flow of it and just going with it. And that taught me a lesson, but I also loved the result as well at the end. So that was my favourite. Do you have a favourite overall? It might not be today, Gary.
I do like, because I do like my sewing. So I do like my my little doodle journal, my stitch journal, you know, and I've said before, it's something that you can take anywhere. You know, you can be on a bus, on the train, and you can be doodling away. I mean, I think just mentioning Russell, with his stitch, and he goes on a train, doesn't he? Now he did one too,
Yes,
which was about sort of like how many, you know, stitch dots within the a shape, and then he did more and more and more, and it just the density of stitch, and it was just a lovely exercise. And I thought, no, you're on my thinking, you're thinking just how I think. So that was really nice, and another guy, which is lovely. So
yes, I'll put the link to that below, actually, Gary, to that one as well. So
yeah, because it was nice that Russell did that. It was lovely.
Yeah.
So no, so that's my sort of selection to
Yeah. Yeah. But we've had such fun. I mean, we have had such fun over the year, and we'll see where we go next year with it. You know, we'll keep putting these videos out. Hopefully we'll get some more guests as well. At the moment, I've been concentrating on getting guests for my podcast, but I'm now going to be getting guests again for the YouTube channel. So we'll get some more guests and get their interactions, which is lovely. So yeah, we'll just keep going. And it is just about, you know, playing. And because we're coming up with these ideas, some of them will be overlapping, but I think what we really want to do with this channel, it's not about just getting you to log on and see the idea and go, I've got it now, it's switching off. What we would like you to do is to watch and play and paint with us. And I know some of our ladies that watch us and gents do, because they've emailed and said they love the mindful chats at the beginning. And then they get their materials ready and they play with us. Because often we'll say things in the middle and they'll go, I didn't even know that. Or you'll be teaching people about watercolor. So it is about that learning and watching with us. And I think that is happening now, looking at the figures and statistics as well. I think people aren't just logging on for a minute and then skipping by it. It is about giving yourself that mindful time. This is my time. I'm going to sit down and watch this 25-minute video, and I'm going to paint along with these guys, and I am going to give myself that creative time. It's about not being in a rush. Oh, I've got the technique, I know it, I'll do it next week, and I'll do it in a minute. It is about that mindful process, and we're certainly now, I think, getting more into the flow of that, Gary, which is lovely. So that's helping us. It de-stresses us, doesn't it? There have been so many times that you've messaged me and said, you know, zooming in 10 minutes, and I just thought, oh, I've got so much to do. As soon as I do the exercise, I'm so chilled and so glad.
Just take some time out, you know, that's what we do. And it's true, you know, people I like messages, you say, well, what are we doing today? I said, I haven't thought about that yet, give me 5 minutes. I come back, right, that's what we're doing, you need this, this and this. Go, and you know, but we get it done.
Yeah. And that's what we're saying to people, Gary, is that you can get your materials together in 5 minutes, because I do, and I'm not an artist. So you can get these materials together very easily and just play. Lovely. Well, listen, lovely YouTuber, if you are watching this as we are putting it out there, we always say our videos are completely timeless. So when you find it, it's meant to find you. It means that you're in the right mind frame to do some arty and crafty stuff. So whenever you've found this, congratulations. Let's see where it takes you. But if you are watching it with us right now, and it is the end nearly of December 2023, I'd like to wish you all the very best for 2024. Let's see where it takes us. Gary, the same to you. I hope you have a wonderful festive season, and thank you so much for teaching me so much in 2023 and helping me to learn about myself and learn all these wonderful techniques. So, and thank you to anybody who has joined us, left comments and played along with us. We really do appreciate every single one of you. So thank you so much, and all the best for 2024. Okay. You know what's coming next, Gary? Happy New Year and bye! Happy New Year, everybody.